It's a challenge, and I'm not going to pretend that it isn't. Oftentimes, I'll be producing an episode of the show as there are unspeakable tragedies happening around the world and in my own backyard. As I produce this episode of the show, I'm still in contact with many of my industry friends as well as family who have been directly impacted by the wildfires in and around the Los Angeles area. Thoughts and prayers are just not an acceptable response anymore. And let's be honest, that hasn't been a suitable response for a very long time to a number of things. As we get into our episode today with Erika Cross, I would love for a few things to happen. First, if this podcast can serve as a respite for those who are suffering, even if it's only for a few minutes, to think about something else. And second, to provide an opportunity to think differently about what we know and what's possible. What do I mean by that? I believe that we need to reimagine what we know if we want to change things for the better. I also believe that creatives are the best ones to manifest it, create it, and make those changes real for the rest of us. A while back, you heard an episode of the show discussing Venetian chimneys. These were crafted centuries ago by creative types who suffered the same types of fires that demolished entire communities that we see now. Beautifully crafted chimneys that also served as spark arresters in the highly dense communities of Venice, Italy. Is art going to keep California from wildfires or floods or earthquakes or landslides that follow the fires and floods? No. But looking to creative types allow us to think differently about things which often put us in the right mental space to address new ways to approach these challenges. It's certainly not going to be the politicians. Let's be straight about that. So for a few minutes, sit back, drive carefully, enjoy your workout or whatever it is you're doing while you listen. Do it safely. And we'll be right back with artist Erika Cross. I am just incredibly proud of this partnership I've got with Thermosol. They have been presenting partners of Convo by Design going on 5 years now. And there is a certain amount of pride that comes with saying that the show is presented by the company that is the best in the world at what they do. Thermosol engineers the most exceptional smart shower products and steam shower systems worldwide, full stop. And it's for a few reasons. First of all, they were the first company to design and patent the technology here in the United States, dating back to 1958. Thermosol, a US-based manufacturer based in Round Rock, Texas, employs an engineering team that designs, tests, and continuously refines the product. Their quality control team tests every single steam generator before it departs the factory. Who else does that? Nobody that I know of. I have the pleasure of working with some world-class designers and architects who tell me, and if you're in the business, you know this, that the idea of luxury has changed, especially when clients want a spa-like bathroom. Steam is mandatory, or it's just not considered a luxury. And if you want to add steam, you have only one true option, my opinion, and that's Thermosol. Mitch Altman, third generation CEO of this family-owned company of 65 years, continues to innovate in the bathroom and shower space through technological marvels such as intelligent showering systems, sound therapy, aromatherapy, technical interfaces, and so much more. And now Thermosol, the industry leader in steam bath equipment and technology since 1958, as I mentioned, is enhancing its already stellar family of products with the new indoor and outdoor luxury saunas, available in 3 designs. The configurations are absolutely amazing, and you should probably go check them out. Indoor and outdoor options. It's amazing. You really do need to check them out. Go to thermosol.com or at Thermosol on the socials. If you had to choose one over the other, because in life no two things are ever equal, Are you an artist or are you a designer?
Designer.
Really?
Yes. Yes.
So would you say that when you work, you're looking at form or function first? You're looking at function first.
Well, now that's a tricky question.
It is, right?
So if that's how you're defining it, then I would have to say more artist because, I do a lot of tables and things like that. And so they're pretty straightforward in terms of function. So when I design a piece, the function is already sorted out. And so I think I am looking at form first.
Okay. Well, and it's funny because I asked the question because I find your background fascinating, really, to have a degree. You have an MFA degree, correct?
Yes.
And you also have a BS in interior design.
Yes. And a BFA.
Okay,
But I had two undergraduate degrees. I pursued them at the same time. It was a lot.
that's a lot of school.
It is. I remember one semester I had 24 credit hours. It was pretty insane.
Oh, that's insane.
It is. And then I was also working, two or three jobs at the time. I really don't know how I did it. I could not do it now.
That's so funny. Well, and I asked the question because, interior design degrees, it comes up a lot when I'm speaking with designers. If you have a degree in architecture and you're an architect, totally get it because that particular industry has made it. You can't be a working architect without a degree in architecture. You just can't. You can be a designer without a degree. And I wanted to start here for a very specific reason. First of all, because you have an overabundance of formal education, which is a rarity, and you have a background in art as well as design. And it's funny because I have heard, I don't have a degree in design, but I have heard that the interior design degree is very art history heavy.
I wouldn't say that was the case for my program. My program was very technical. So it was very lead space, ADA, drafting, CAD. So it was very, very technical. I don't think there was a lot of art history background in that one.
There wasn't, yeah, and drafting in CAD with the tools now. Do you feel like you need that as part of your education?
The drafting, no. CAD, absolutely. I use it every day. That's where most of my designs begin. I actually don't do a ton of sketching. It's all digital. I mean, I may sketch out, some basic forms, but then I take it right into CAD and I kind of do my ideation there.
Uh, do you work primarily in art now, or are you an interior designer as well?
Mostly furniture design. So I do a little bit of sculptural wall pieces, but mostly furniture.
Yeah, but you don't. So you don't do any interior design work.
Not for my career. I do a lot for
Okay.
myself.
Yeah,
Work few properties, which is really exciting. But yeah, not professionally.
for property. So do you invest in flip?
No, so I am working on one of my dad's rental properties. Had some bad tenants, did not take care of the place, and so it needed to be fixed. And then I basically decided to change the whole floor plan, and it's much better now. And doing all of the work myself with my partner. And then me and my partner also recently bought a new house. That's a reno house, so we are redoing that. And as soon as that's done, we'll move in.
That's so much fun, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's also a lot of work. It is a
For
ton.
sure.
I'll have to say demo is the funnest part of all of it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So here's the thing, Erica. Absolutely love introducing new creators to designers, architects, those who are specifiers. I think it's really important because we've gotten, post pandemic, there is a need and desire for meaningful materials, is what I'll call it. It's things that come out of big box, like you can't have an individual craftsman who's making a plumbing fixture one at a time. You could, but it's not practical. When you want to know that there's a certain level of workmanship and quality and reliability and consistency into certain things, right? But when it comes to furnishings, art, handmade goods, there's been an appreciation for that in the last really 5 to 10 years. It's funny. For years, I didn't blame every panel we had, you know, 8 to 10 years ago was, what do millennials want? And how do we reach millennials? Do you remember that? And so now it turns out that all those things that millennials wanted, between story in their goods, they wanted handmade things, they wanted something that they could tell their friends the provenance of it and where it came from and what it was and what it was made of and who made it. And that is so special. It's like the business came to you.
Yes. And it kind of came back around, I mean, that's the way it was. And then, we started getting everything mass produced and getting everything from big box stores. And then I think the appreciation came all the way back around full circle. And yeah, I mean, especially in the collectible design world, that's really growing, exponentially. It's a whole different, field from what was going on 5 years ago. I think a lot of millennials too, especially the collectors, like art collectors, you can fill a house with beautiful art, but you need furniture that goes along with it. And I think that's really what's driving the collectible design movement right now. It's really interesting and it's great. I love it. I mean, that's what I do.
What's your preferred medium?
Ooh, that is a tough question. Are we talking materiality or I need more specific from you.
Just like an artist and designer, not to answer a straightforward question. No qualifiers. What's your favorite medium?
Oh, I'm going to say I love casting materials.
You do?
So casting, yes. Resin, but also one of my favorite materials is called Jesmonite. Are you familiar with that?
No.
It's an acrylic fortified gypsum, so it's basically an eco resin. It's amazing. I mean, it cures in 20, 30 minutes. You can make like faux terrazzo, and it's just amazing. I love casting.
Where does that come from?
The casting,
What's the material made of?
so it's acrylic and gypsum, so kind of like a plaster, but with a plasticizer incorporated. So it's really dense. It's great. You can lay it up kind of like fiberglass as well. So you can get it, you can cast it in really thin applications and it has incredible strength. So
How does it come? Does it come as a powder? Does it come as a liquid? Does it come as a gel?
a powder and a liquid.
So you mix.
Yep.
Same type of mixing as an epoxy, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. And where does one get that? Do you have to order it specialty, or is it?
I think now it's available in the US. So I was introduced to it when I was doing my master's degree in London. And so it's really popular in the UK. And I believe now maybe one place in the US sells it, and maybe that's in like Seattle or something. I was importing it from UK for a while, but I did get something recently from the US. So I think it's gradually moving here, which is exciting.
Take me on the journey. Take me through the process. So you get your education,
Yes.
you graduate,
Yes.
then, and I think this is an important question too, because, as every architect is a creative, as every designer is a creative, it gets hard because, and, I think in part, I've been railing on this a lot actually for a while, between social media and the trade pubs doing a focus on ephemeral and celebrity design. I mean, it's either temporary or it's just celebrities who are incorporating things. I don't particularly think, I think it's safe to say most celebrities don't have a great deal of taste, to me, unless it's a specialty for them. If they hire a designer to do it for them, that's great. Others that you've read about, will have things made that was actually somebody else's design, and dupes are all over the place. It's got to be hard for an artist too. Is it hard for you knowing that the moment you create something, somebody's going to rip it off?
Yes. And as an independent designer, it's really, there's not much you can do to protect yourself. I mean, you can get around patents. I mean, and those are like, seven to $10,000. You can't, you can't be writing patents for each design. It's just impossible. The way I think about it is if I design a piece and I get it out into the world, if I get it published or I show it at um, a trade show or a design festival or something, and I get it in front of enough eyes, then I think that I'm not as nervous about being ripped off as I would be had it just been, not out in the world. Because also the people who are willing to pay for the originals aren't interested in the dupes. And so I really feel like the people buying the knockoffs versus the people buying collectible design are just two totally different crowds. And so I just don't feel like it bothers me that much. It's frustrating that this happens, but I don't feel that it's taking away from my business at all.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you find, your work is fantastic? And by the way, for those who are interested, knowing that this is an audio podcast, if you want to follow along, erikacross.com, Erica with a K, Cross with a C, and you can follow along and check out her work as well. What's the most fun for you, ideating new designs or the actual making and fabrication?
Making and fabrication, definitely.
Really?
Yeah. So my process is very experimental. I kind of jump in before I have a lot resolved. And I feel like that is the way that I resolve it, is I just kind of start to develop it. I do like a really low fidelity prototype and then just kind of build from there and work out the issues as I go. Um, it's really fun for me. And what's interesting is that my pieces look pretty straightforward and really elemental. But in terms of engineering, they're actually very complicated. And a lot of my peers make jokes that, I don't design anything that's easy to make, which is absolutely true. I mean, most of my pieces take 6 months to a year to actually work out all of the engineering and the fabrication.
So you have your own studio.
Yes.
Do you mix and fabricate everything yourself?
Mostly, yes. I would say 85%. I just make myself, yeah.
So you like getting your hands dirty.
Oh, very dirty. Yes.
One of the things that I find so fascinating about your work is that you can manipulate it. Your bolt, for example. So you're talking about a table on an actual what appears to be a screwed base. You can move that up and down.
Yes.
How did you, and what I think is so fascinating about this is there's balance, and clearly there's engineering involved in this. Take me through the process. We're just talking about the bolt right now, the bolt table, right? Take me through the engineering of this, because there's a lot of different materials involved in this. There's a lot of sculpting. It's a ton of work. How do you how do you take you walk me through the ideation process and then through the fabrication process?
Sure. I actually don't remember the initial thought process behind this piece. I think it just kind of lived in my head for a while. And one day I just decided to start making it. I really hadn't figured out a lot. I knew that I wanted a tabletop that was height adjustable. I knew that I wanted it to resemble a nut and a bolt. And I wanted it to function in a really honest way. I didn't want any gimmicks. I didn't want any fasteners, anything like that. So I 3D printed the base and then 3D printed a collar that fit around that, and then built a tabletop and just kind of played with it until I figured out I needed to ballast the base because I wanted to have a really small diameter on the base, but it needed to be sturdy. And it needed to be heavy enough so that it didn't move when you rotated the top, but light enough that one person could move it. And so I played a lot with weight. I was just filling up the 3D print with chains and weights, like 5 pound weights just stacked on each other. And I kept playing with that weight, adding, removing until I got the perfect balance. And then I decided that it was time to actually make it in the real material. So I did outsource the production of the stone. I mean, I'm sure I could chisel stone, but I really don't need to. So I outsourced that. And the way I had that fabricated is that I had the marble fabricated so that it was hollow. I had them fill the top half with expanding foam and then reinsert a marble base so that it was completely ballasted. It kept a very low center of gravity, which keeps it completely stable. It looks like, it would tip over, but actually, if you push it and it starts to tip, which it takes quite a bit of force, it actually self-corrects before it would fall over. So, I mean, it took about a year to get that right, but I'm very happy with the results. And then I spent a while working on the interface between the marble and then the collar that's in the tabletop because I wanted the rotational aspect of it to be a really tactile experience. I want it to be very smooth and almost surprising in the way that it kind of glides. And then also there was a lot of tweaking of the tolerances. You don't want it too tight so that it's too difficult to spin, but you also don't want it too loose so that it wobbles or so that it spins when you don't intend it to. So just a lot of trial and error. It was fun. It took longer than I thought, but I'm very happy with the results.
You should be. I think it's amazing. And one of the things too, and that's why I wanted to ask you about this too, because form and function, that's actually why I started the conversation the way that I did, because there's so much that goes into it. Isn't it interesting? You can look at a piece that somebody creates and just say, wow, what an interesting piece. It's so simple. I bet it was really easy to do. And that's it. It's funny to me because I think that's where many people put the value on art. Was it easy to do? Was it hard to do? If it was harder to do, then for some reason there's more value attached to it. But oftentimes people don't see the thought. That's a skill. That's an art. Is making something very complicated look very simple.
Yes. And actually, that goes back to a question or a topic that you brought up earlier about, you know, artist work being knocked off essentially. And another thought I have around that is like, if someone else wants to go through that process, go ahead. You know, so because my work is so involved and takes so much engineering, that also makes me more secure in that, that's what makes it unique. That's the that's sort of the genius behind it, if you will. So if someone wants to spend 6 months working out the engineering of the bolt table, well, have fun.
Knock yourself out.
Yes.
That's hilarious. But the other thing too that I really really like about it, where form and function meet at an intersection that just makes it both beautiful, fun, and functional, is the fact that if you take two bolts and you put them next to each other, you can put them at different heights so that they cross. You can take three. You can actually take as many as you want and expand on this idea. And I love what that does. Um, to me, something like that is just so empowering for a designer. Anytime someone puts out a piece that you can manipulate to further a design, I'm a huge fan of that.
Yes. Reconfigurability plays a big part in my work. And the idea there is that if the pieces can change and move, they can change and move along with the user. So, you're not always going to have the same sofa. You're not maybe always going to live in the same house. Life changes. And I think that if your pieces can accommodate those changes, then value is created. And there's sort of a relationship between the user and the object. And the goal ultimately is to reduce waste. So the idea is that you buy this coffee table and that's the coffee table that you have. You don't replace it. Um, and I think there's value in having sort of emotional relationship with the piece as well. Um, yeah, I think also if the user can interact with it, that creates sort of a sense of play. Um, I don't know, it's hard to articulate, but it's something that I feel very strongly about, but it's hard to actually put it into words. I don't know if any of that made sense.
You are listening to my conversation with artist Erika Cross. We'll be right back. As a busy professional designer, you know how important it is to find the right partnerships. Partnerships that allow you to specify the right products for every project. Professionals like you don't just have time to sit around and waste, right? So let me tell you about one of my partnerships. Pacific Sales is here to serve you with expert, knowledgeable, and non-commissioned professionals to help you specify the right product for all your projects. Non-commissioned. That means their only incentive is your satisfaction. Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company, has just that, with over 60 years of service in Southern California. Pacific Sales is your destination for exploration, advice, and inspiration. And you will find all your favorite brands, like Monogram, and their commitment to providing exceptional products, starting with materials. Monogram sources commercial-grade stainless steel on their refrigerators, unscratchable sapphire glass on their cooktop knobs, durable marine-grade bearings on their dishwasher racks. Monogram takes inspiration from the leading-edge materials used in the high-end automotive and aeronautics industry to provide you with lasting beauty and exceptional quality. The beauty is backed by the same level of attention to performance, which is why Monogram appliances are trusted and sought after by chefs all over the country. Chain-driven French oven doors that can be opened with one hand, and an industry-exclusive hearth oven that allows for all-electric indoor brick oven-style cooking without the need for external ventilation. These are just a few of the things that make Monogram so special. Pacific Sales features Monogram appliances, and Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home team is here to help you and offer their Pro Rewards program, which is a trade program unlike any you have experienced before. And here's the cherry on top: access. Access to exclusive builder trade incentives from top brands like Monogram. Visit a Pacific Sales showroom today to learn how you can unlock additional savings and benefits. Don't miss out on the opportunity to work with the best of the best. Visit Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home today and elevate your projects to new heights. Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, where excellence meets expertise. The absolute best specifying designers, architects, and landscape designers are all highly focused on the technology and performance of products and materials today. You just have to be. And you have to because the products you specify for your projects have to perform and they have to last. That is one of the reasons why I am so incredibly proud to be working with TimberTech. Their focus on the technical renaissance of synthetic decking is literally changing the conversation about innovation and performance. It pulls focus on three priorities homeowners have and expect from the products their designers and architects specify for their luxury projects. 1, the aesthetics must match the overall design and fit visually. 2, durability and maintenance. I've told you my board flipping stories about my own wood decks over the years. Clients not only want beauty, but they want ease of use and they want it to last for decades. 3, sustainably made. Clients are more conscious about the environment and they want the same of their materials and the companies that manufacture their materials. TimberTech hits each one of these elements with a product that not only meets expectations, they exceed them. TimberTech makes a synthetic decking that looks just like wood. Color and embossed wood grain for a natural appearance. Their composite decking is technologically superior. It's been created to last for decades, and it's manufactured with up to 85% recycled materials. 85% recycled materials. Their advanced PVC vintage and landmark collections have a Class A flame spread rating, making these products an amazing choice for wildfire prone areas, which unfortunately continues to grow on the risk map. Check the show notes for more information about this and to find the nearest showroom or lumberyard where you can find TimberTech. You can also check them out directly, timbertech.com. No, it makes perfect sense to me. And look, one of the things that I absolutely love doing is having these conversations to explore these ideas and the concepts, because it's too easy to go online, see something in a social media post and just say, oh, cool, I'm going to get that, or go to a store or go to an art fair and see something and just say, oh, that's great, I'm going to get that and put it in, without, if you don't understand the background, if you don't understand the artisan who made something, if you don't understand the story behind it. I go to next is E01.
Yes.
Okay, so I am loving this. Now, this is a willow slab and acrylic.
Yes.
So I'm curious, is the acrylic, did you form this or did you cut it?
Cut it. So that's sheet. And it was actually a scrap from the.
I could tell. I could tell, and that's what I love about this. You've got the little bow ties on it. You've got you. So obviously you had a crack that you had to stabilize. I love that. Tell me about the wood. Where'd you get it from?
So what's interesting about this piece is that this is part of my thesis work from undergrad. So this was, I don't know, 2011 or 12, something like that. So this is one of my earliest pieces, actually. And I find it interesting because people are still very interested in it. And to me, it just feels like so long ago. So it's great that you bring that up. I got the wood from an urban sawmill. So I think the willow tree was cut down somewhere in Ann Arbor to accommodate a parking lot, and it was slapped up by this urban sawmill. And so it's all local material, reclaimed.
I absolutely love that, and there's a certain amount of joy. As a woodworker, there's a certain amount of joy. It's funny. I don't know if you feel the same way. When I first started working, I'd buy material. So I would buy something that was kiln dried, so that I knew where it came from and I knew who processed it. And that was kind of cool. But then I started having so much more fun working with found objects, recycling, repurposing, reformatting. Do you feel the same way in that regard?
Yes, absolutely. Especially right now, it's interesting that you bring that up because I am setting up a new studio and I'm getting really into Facebook Marketplace and finding objects that people are getting rid of and finding really unique uses for them. So right now I'm currently sort of obsessed with 55-gallon drums. It's
Huh.
so bizarre. But making shelves and using them for table legs, kind of going for this really designery industrial feel. So yeah, absolutely. I love found materials. I love repurposing things. And I think it's important, and also you can't budget wise, if you are buying everything brand new, you just run through your budget immediately. And then it has less personality, I think.
Totally agree. Jumping over to EO3, which is black walnut, which is one of my absolute favorite species of wood. I love black
Same.
walnut. I actually love working with uh, cedar more, just because when I'm turning, it's kind of like butter. I mean, but black walnut, there's just something. And what's funny? People don't realize how many species of wood are out there, and how wood acts differently in different environments. And when I saw EO3 and this black walnut and acrylic, I absolutely love this. Where did this come from? What was the idea for it?
So this came from the same urban sawmill. And the idea here was that I had, so again, this is my thesis work. So E1, 2, and 3 were my thesis for undergrad. And so, I didn't have a lot of money and I was working with what I had and what I could find. The acrylic came from the same place. It was a scrap piece from the automotive show. It must have been part of someone's exhibit or was supposed to be and was thrown out. So I had one piece of walnut, a slab, and one piece of acrylic. And I wanted to make a table and I wanted to have a 3D form. But if you cut concentric rings out of one slab, you're going to have gaps. There's no way to stack them one on the other. So I offset and filled in the gaps with the acrylic. And so I could make a 3D form that was very organic out of two sheet materials, essentially. So
What's
basically, I was born from being resourceful.
Yeah, right. I feel like that is the ultimate resourcefulness to me is one of the most appealing forms of art or appealing aspects to art. I kind of feel when it comes to design, I think I would compare that to um, loving small spaces. I feel like small spaces, if someone is a real show of true artisanship in design, like if you can design a well-crafted small space, you've done something. Big spaces, big budgets. I don't want to say anyone can do it because I don't think that that's true, but I do feel like it's far easier to design a big room with a big budget because you've got all kinds of opportunities.
Sure, there's far more runway, essentially. Yes.
Yeah. And I was thinking about, prior to our conversation, I was actually thinking about your work. I went to, I just got back from a recent visit to DC, and I was walking the waterfront and I was thinking about the Watergate. And you've got the Watergate, you've got these buildings that are all round. I've never been inside, but I don't know that you have a 90-degree anywhere in each building. That's got to be difficult,
Sure.
right?
The drywallers must have had quite experience.
But again, with material, there's a certain artistry that goes into that, and that's also why I wanted to ask you about your favorite materials to work with. Working with wood is one thing. Working with something that's malleable and pliable, like an epoxy or something like that, is fun because your only constraints are time,
Sure.
right? You gotta get it done before the drying time. That's it.
Yep.
But something like wood is you can take all day, you can take all week, you can take as long as you want, or stone if you're sculpting. When you think about your work, do you see it as a timeline, or is there a plot to it, or do you feel more about your work and your art that it comes from where you are at the time?
I would say it comes from where I am at the time. My first and latest collection, that did have a timeline, so I was developing it to show at Wanted along with ICFF. And so that did have a timeline, and that was sort of developed to fit that purpose. But typically, I am just developing work as I sort of think of it, and it takes as long as it takes, essentially.
What is your latest collection?
It's called Elements. It was developed actually during quarantine. So I basically pivoted. I was doing mostly freelance, like contractor type work, and I was creative director for a local supplier to mass retail. And then when COVID hit, basically mass retail, you know, bombed. So that company kind of let everyone go. I was stuck home, didn't have any clients. Everyone was panicking. And so I thought, the goal was always to develop my own furniture line, but I just was always distracted by client work. And so this was the opportunity, and I took it and I developed my first line, Elements. And it is a console table called Anvil. I don't know if you can see any of that on my website.
Hmm.
It's the step table, and it is a shelf called capsule and a fruit bowl or a centerpiece bowl called snug.
So much fun. And I love how fun your work is. And it's interesting because I have spoken to artisans in the past who have just fun work, but they don't have fun making it. They don't have fun doing it. It's a struggle for some to create their work. Do you have fun creating, or is it a struggle?
No, it's fun. I mean, I'm often just completely covered in sawdust and, just dirty in the workshop. It's fun. I will say where it becomes not so fun is the sanding. So
Is the what?
sanding. So I
Yeah.
do these art pieces called squiggles, and that is all hand sanding, and it's hours and hours and hours of little tiny tedious, little pieces of sandpaper. That I can't say is a lot of fun, but the other parts, yes.
The squiggles. What is the material? Is it wood or is it a
It's
plaster?
PVC.
It's what?
PVC.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yep. And so they are all CNC'd, and then there's a very lengthy finishing process. So basically, I layer up material to get a very, very smooth, and it's coating it, sanding it, coating it, sanding it. They look really simple, and the fabrication process on these is it's very intense. Yeah, I had an intern this summer, and we joke that he now has a minor in sanding.
It's funny you say that because the artistry really is in the finishing. It's in
Yes.
the detail. It's in the finish work. I was looking at your cork, your work with cork. Talk about sanding. Talk about finish work.
I love cork though. It is
Do you?
amazing material. Absolutely fantastic. It machines beautifully. You can hide seams almost invisible. I mean, it is a fantastic material, fully recyclable. Um, just love it.
You know what I love too about cork that most people don't use it for is the acoustic baffling
Yes,
and the sound dampening. I mean, cork is perfect for that.
absolutely. So actually, these pieces behind me were test pieces. So this is foam, like insulation foam, but these were test cuts for the actual cork products. So this is I have a whole line of these in cork, dark and light cork, and they're fantastic. Yeah,
So wait a minute. So what's behind you? That's foam, like out of a box foam, out of shipping foam.
yeah, like the sheet rigid insulation foam that you'd get at Lowe's.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I do a lot of prototyping with foam. A lot of my pieces begin there. It's easy to machine, it's accessible, it's available in various thicknesses and sheets. So yeah, so these were all tests for the cork pieces, which are fantastic.
That is really cool. I appreciate that too. Finding some materials. Now, would you ever work in foam?
For a finished piece, maybe something on the interior to reduce weight, but I don't see any of my actual finished pieces being made out of foam. I mean, maybe something like this, if someone was interested in really cheap sound dampening materials and they were all about it, I would make something like that. But I don't know about furniture.
Because, well, no, that's what I'm talking about. Like, what's behind you to have a whole being an audio for me to have something that's sound dampening that looks like that extraordinary.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
these didn't even require sanding, which is unusual for my
Is that
work.
true?
Yeah.
Just straight out of the CNC machine.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
it's a good
I like
finish.
that. That's really cool. What's next?
What is next? So my current projects consist of a few bespoke pieces for hospitality. which has been really fun. I'm loving bespoke. I find it's a little more free, right? Because I have a client, they have a vision, they want my sort of what you call fingerprint on it, but it's not necessarily directly in line with my personal body of work, and I find that really fun. It feels like playing, really. So I'm doing a lot of bespoke, and I hope to continue to do that. And then I am developing a bar cabinet as part of my personal, what I call studio work. And that is very much in the early prototyping stages. And right now, where that is sort of figuring out materiality. So some of my pieces begin with materials and others are developed. And then I spend a lot of time deciding what material is most appropriate for the application. And so that's where I am with my bar cabinet.
Hmm.
Yeah.
When you started the business, how did you envision the business side of it? Did you start focusing on specifiers and designers on the interior side? Did you try to place it yourself in your interiors projects and then get some publicity and promotion for it? Where did you start?
I started by launching at Wanted Design. So I did the launch pad program in, I think, 2021. The COVID years are a bit of a blur, but yeah, that's where I started, and it was just immediate connections to designers and the trade. It was probably the best way for me to have started because it was just kind of jumping in headfirst. And Wanted is a great program too. So being able to exhibit along with other amazing, emerging designers was a really great experience.
Tell me about that. What was the impetus for you to choose that? And more importantly, and I think for other designers too, the most important question is how did you get over the imposter syndrome and feel like you look? I think it's important that everybody knows that at one point in time or another, everybody feels that way. Everybody, and by the way, I'm totally assuming here. You may say, Josh, no, I didn't feel that way at any point in time. But I think that most people, if not all, at some point in time, do feel like I'm not worthy. Like, why my art, why my product would make someone else interested. Did you ever sort of feel that way, and how did you overcome it?
100%. Um, I think overcoming it was just a gradual sort of, I don't know, self-reassurance. Like, okay, you won this award. Well, maybe you won it because of, whatever. But then, you won this award and then you made this sale. And it's just kind of like telling myself that I deserve it. Yeah, imposter syndrome is a tricky one. And I know it's really common for creatives. Yeah, it's a weird feeling thinking, wow, somebody wants to pay that for a piece I made that came out of my brain, really? Uh, yeah, it can be pretty tricky. But I don't know, I would say it's probably within the last year or so that I've been sort of coming out of that. Yeah, and it comes and goes. It's not all the time that, I feel very confident about the work, but I think that's just part of it. It's part of being a creative. And I think it's also really important to feel that way sometimes because it makes you assess what you're doing and reflect. And I think that that's a huge part of creativity and producing art and design is to be self-aware.
What was it about the Wanted program that was so appealing to you?
I knew I wanted to exhibit at ICFF. Um, and it's interesting because it's only recently that Wanted Design and ICFF were together, in the same program, in the same fair. So I had actually gotten into Wanted, I think the year before they had merged, but then that was the year ICFF was canceled. So I had gotten into Wanted. I was also working on getting into ICFF Studio. That's the emerging designer platform supported by Bernhardt. I was a finalist for that. I had gotten into Wanted. It was amazing. I was really excited, and then it was canceled. Um, and it worked out in my favor because I actually was going to exhibit just one piece, which is the step table. And I think it didn't happen for maybe 1 or 2 years. And in the interim, I developed an entire collection. And so when they held the fair again, I had more work to exhibit. And it just seemed like the right sort of jumping off platform. It was the right audience. Um, Wanted Designs Launchpad is specifically tailored to emerging designers. They had affordable booth pricing specifically because, the designers are emerging. So it just seemed like the right fit.
So interesting. I think too that as more artisans, and I backpedal a little bit because I feel like, every time there is a major rift in our society, be it the financial crisis or COVID, or prior to that, the tech bubble, back in '99. What's so interesting is you have people who sort of make that serves as the impetus, sort of the kick in the butt that people need to sort of to say, okay, I'm just gonna I've been thinking about it. I'm just gonna go do it. I'm gonna try it. And I love because Erika, you serve as sort of confidence building for someone who's saying, you know, maybe I'm not ready. Well, you know what? Maybe you are, but more so for designers who are specifying projects for art dealers or art collectors to say, you know what? I can get out of my traditional bubble and look at not look at the same things that are published in the usual places, to go find up and comers and people who are creating and crafting new things. And I also think that the more artisans like you and more artists like you who are creating new things, like I'm looking at the vertebral chair.
Yes.
Okay. The reason why I'm looking at this is because when I see new things that serve old problems, I like that. And I'm always reminded, like I said, I was in DC over the weekend, so I was traveling, and every time I get on a plane, I am reminded that not all old problems are solved. Being on a plane is probably one of the worst experiences we have now, um, compared to where it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. It's one of those things that keeps getting worse, which is a rarity, right? But it's people like you. Tell me about the chair and tell me what the thought process was.
So the chair is part of my grad school thesis. Uh, so there's a bit of a history with this one. Are you familiar with Amarim?
No.
Okay, so it's the world's largest cork producer. They are based in Portugal. And cork production services, I think, maybe 70% of Portugal's economic income. So with the rise of the faux wine stoppers, Portugal's economy was, going downhill rapidly. So they were searching for new applications for cork. And so Amarim came to Royal College of Art, where I was studying, and donated tons of cork, tons and tons and tons of cork, and basically was asking us to just figure out something, do something with it, find new applications, anything, go crazy. Um, and so I developed this material called trifold. And basically, what the material does is that it really capitalizes on the inherent properties of cork. So cork is amazing in its compressive strength, but it's pretty bad in its tensile strength. So if you have a sheet of cork, you can snap it. But if you compress it, I mean, it's wild. And so what trifold does is it tessellates cork into little tiles, basically relieving it from any kind of tensile strength. And it's adhered to a fabric backing. And so the fabric takes all of the tensile force, while if you roll it up, the cork takes all of the compressive force. And so while playing with this, I sort of realized it's a bit like is it uh reinforced concrete? What is that called? When you have like the bars, you pre-tension.
Rebar?
Yeah, but you pre-tension it. So I think it's used a lot in bridges. So like it flattens out when there's force.
Okay.
Anyway, there's a word for it. It's not coming to mind. But it works a bit like that. And so what I realized is that by sort of tessellating this cork and adhering it to fabric, you could get this insane amount of strength from the material, and it could be in very, very thin applications. So I think the thickness of that chair is maybe an inch, and it's only supported by one central spine, and it's insanely rigid and strong. So I actually exhibited that piece at ICFF in 2014 with the Furniture Society. And I remember specifically there was this guy, he's a very big guy. He came over and he's like, there's no way the chair can support my weight. And I was like, please sit on it. And he's just like, no, I'm going to break it. And I really encouraged him to do it. And he did. And he bounced a little too on it. And there was no problems. So it's a fun chair. I don't think that, it's anything for production, but it's more of a concept piece to showcase the possibilities of cork and sort of flaunt its inherent properties. And so, yeah. And actually, another thing about the chair is that the seat is sort of angled up when it's not in use. And then when you sit down, it flattens out and it really grips that central bar. And so it doesn't even sort of wobble side to side. It was a fun project.
And it sticks to the steel frame by through friction, not through adhesion. So
Yep.
you can take this thing off, roll it up, walk
Yep.
away with it. Does the frame fold as well?
Yes. So what's funny about it is the frame folds because, I made this in London and I exhibited it at ICFF. So I had to fit in my suitcase. I was a student. I couldn't ship it. I was broke. And so I brought it in my suitcase. And I remember I wasn't quite happy with the polishing of the steel. So in my hotel room, I had actually borrowed the maintenance guy's drill and put a polishing wheel on it and was polishing the steel frame like the night before installing an ICFF. So that it was a fun one.
I kind of wanted to follow up that with this. I love this story. And what I find so interesting about it is I feel like in our industry, in the design, interiors, architecture, not so much, but because I think architecture is all about testing, trying, scrapping, redesigning. But in the furnishings industry, we kind of look at the same things over and over and over again. And there's a disconnect between the artistry and experimentation and experimental nature of students and the willingness to try and take those experiments and make them practical working models in manufacturing. Do you think that still exists, and why?
I believe so. And I think I struggled with this a lot as well as, I have so much formal education and I struggled a bit after graduating, figuring out like, what do I do with this? Because my work was really experimental and it was wonderful for school. But transitioning that into a career was something that took me quite a while to figure out, which is why, I said I was doing a lot of client work, creative direction. I was doing product photography. I was doing straightforward work because my personal work was a lot of experimental, quirky things that, how does that make money? How do you even get it out into the world? That was a big hurdle that I had to get over. And how I got over that, I'm not really sure. I do think it was just being stuck in the house during quarantine and thinking there's got to be, I have to get my work out into the world. I can't go back after this and do more client work. This is the time. So I think I just did it. I don't know. That's not a very straightforward answer, but I think there is a lot of that still.
Well, and I asked the question because going from that experimental cork chair to the V2, which is a very different design. It doesn't appear that you can take it apart in the same way, but it's the same basic two materials. And that's something that I'm when I'm looking at it, I'm kind of seeing a process from this one experimental piece into the same way that one might go to the auto show and see the concept cars. And then a few years later, you can see how manufacturers will have taken something from a concept and put it into a practical off the lot vehicle. So I look at the V2 and I think, you know what? I could see that. I could see a manufacturer picking that up, but I haven't seen it.
Right. That was the idea. While the verbal chair works, I just, it's not practical for production, really. And so I was trying to modify it somewhat so that it would be more practical for batch production, mass production, etc. So yeah, that's exactly, yes, that's exactly what happened.
I mean, look, I could see a sofa
Yeah,
made out of these two materials.
absolutely.
Why haven't we?
I don't know. That's a good question. That work was so long ago. It almost just, it doesn't even seem relevant to me now, but that's a me problem.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, but it feels like even a different version of me who made that. Um, but it is interesting because I'm getting back into working with cork again. I'm really excited about the material. And this keeps coming up. Um, I get emails, past clients are always interested in the trifold material and um, the clients that I have in hospitality actually are very interested in doing some kind of cork trifold material for their acoustics. So yeah, I'm getting back into it. It wasn't a choice, but I love it. I love that there's still interest in work that I did in school.
Yeah. Well, and also it's interesting too. And the last thing I will say about it is I'm so fond of it and fascinated by it because I love the process. And when I see someone like you, just us looking at each other and me seeing what's behind you with that foam and thinking, as someone who is audio first, I deal with audio issues all the time. Um, dating primarily back to the pandemic. Even before that, if I was at a design center, if I was at the Pacific Design Center doing a live interview, and these are big cavernous spaces with audio waves flying all over the place. And yeah, the mics are directional, but you're still picking things up in the background. Normally that's okay because I like a little bit of life in
Mhm.
the background. But to have something that is both beautiful and functional to solve a very specific problem, I feel like, and again, this is me complaining, so I guess we've come back full circle now, is between social media and uh, the trade publications focusing almost exclusively on the uber wealthy, super rich celebrity design where everything is so expensive that it's been priced out of the realm of possibility for most people. I think the eye is taken off of and the focus is taken off of the actual problem solving, which is what I think design does primarily. And I think the arts do as well. So I think it's interesting and I'm a fan of your work and I love what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
That was my long way of saying I think what you're doing is great and keep going.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. And actually, the I just noticed I had a piece of the trifold here.
How do you get that material to look that way?
CNC. So
It's all
actually,
CNC'd. I love that. I really do. I absolutely.
and it's a really efficient fabrication process because it's just a V groove bit.
Yeah.
So they're all straight profile cuts. There's no surfacing. So you're just kind of calculating where the V groove bit intersects to get a perfect triangle.
Absolutely love it. And for those, again, that want to follow along, Erika Cross, Erika with a K, Cross with a C.com, or you check the show notes and there will be a link to it. Erika, I cannot thank you enough for the time today. This was fun.
Same. Thank you so much.
Design Hardware's newly remodeled showroom is where you will find a gallery-style space with a thoughtful display of products, purposefully positioned to allow unbridled exploration and discovery. High-end faucets, luxury tile, natural stone, wood floors, and bespoke hardware selections are presented in a holistic manner, strategically arranged to stimulate creativity and transition your vision from the conceptual stage to a fully realized space. Conveniently located, free parking available. Stop by to find your inspiration. Collect samples, get expert advice, and tackle everything on your shopping list all in one place. Visit them online at designhardware.com or in the real world, 6053 West 3rd Street in Los Angeles.
Erika, thank you. Loved our chat. Love your work. Thank you to my incredible partner sponsors, Thermosol, Design Hardware, Pacific Sales, Monogram, and TimberTech, for your support of the show and the industry as a whole. We are stronger because of industry partners like you. And of course, thank you for listening to the show, subscribing to the podcast, and sharing it with your friends and colleagues who you think might be interested. Please keep the show and guest suggestions coming. Love them. I totally appreciate them. And I do my best to respond to every one. Convo by Design at outlook.com and on Instagram at Convo by Design with an X. Thanks again for listening. Happy New Year. Make this the year you've been hoping it would be. Until the next episode, stay focused and good Lord above the chaos.